It was 2:30 in the afternoon on a sunny Sunday when Steph Curry found himself sitting on the floor of his home office, holding a piece of paper yellowed by time, with tears silently streaming down his face like rivers of pure emotion. The handwritten letter in his hand trembled slightly, the words written in Isha's unmistakable calligraphy seeming to leap from the paper directly into his heart, each syllable carrying a love he had never imagined existed. "My love," the letter began, dated December 15th, 2012, written in blue ink that had faded slightly with time. "I write this letter at a moment when I know you cannot see who you really are." The familiar scent of Isha's perfume still lightly permeated the paper after all these years, that gentle aroma of vanilla and jasmine that always calmed him, mixing with the rich scent of Colombian coffee that lingered in the office. Steph could hear the distant sounds of children playing in the sunny backyard, their laughter echoing through the open windows, and Isha preparing Sunday lunch in the kitchen, completely unaware that he had accidentally discovered one of the most touching and transformative secrets of their marriage. The office was bathed in the golden afternoon California light, which entered through the large glass windows and created dancing patterns on the oak wood floor. On the wall behind his desk, dozens of family photographs told the story of more than a decade of love, growth, and shared conquests. To understand these tears and the devastating impact of those words written more than a decade ago, we need to go back a few hours and dive into the journey that led to this discovery that would forever change how Steph viewed his past, present, and future. That Sunday morning, Steph had awakened at 8:30 with a special mission that had occupied his thoughts for weeks. Their 11th wedding anniversary was rapidly approaching. It would be next Thursday, and he wanted to find a specific photo he planned to use in an elaborate romantic surprise he had been planning for Isha for months. It was a photo of the two of them at Davidson College, in the early days of their dating in 2007, when Steph was still a relatively unknown young college student and Isha was beginning her culinary career. He vaguely remembered having seen this photo stored somewhere in the office, an image of them both at a college basketball game, Isha in the stands, wearing a shirt with number 30, smiling radiantly while Steph waved to her from the court. The photo represented a moment of innocence and shared dreams, before the pressure of the NBA, before worldwide fame, before children and responsibilities. Steph wanted to use this image as the centerpiece of a surprise video he was creating, showing the evolution of their relationship over the years. Steph's office was his personal sanctuary, a 30-square-meter space on the second floor of his mansion in Atherton, carefully decorated with gleaming trophies, family photos in silver frames, and precious mementos from his NBA career. One of the walls was entirely dedicated to photographs with Isha and the children over the years, a chronological mural of memories that told the visual story of a family that grew and prospered alongside his explosive success in the professional league. There were photos from their wedding in 2011, images from his first games as a professional with Isha in the stands, photographs from the birth of each of their 3 daughters, family vacation moments around the world, NBA championship celebrations, and hundreds of small everyday moments that, together, formed the rich tapestry of a shared life. Steph began his meticulous search through the drawers of the solid oak desk that Isha had specially commissioned and given as a gift on his 35th birthday. The desk was a work of art in itself, made by a local artisan from Napa Valley, with bronze details and secret compartments that Steph was still discovering after 2 years of use. In the first drawer, he found documents meticulously organized by Isha, who always took care of the administrative part of their lives: contracts, warranties, Mont Blanc pens he collected, and some business cards from important people they had met at charitable events. Everything was organized with the military precision that characterized Isha's personality. In the second drawer, his heart warmed to discover a treasure of children's memorabilia, drawings that Riley, Ryan, and Cannon had made over the years, representing the family as colorful stick figures. Handwritten Father's Day cards, each more touching than the last. Small trophies from school, swimming, running, and even spelling bee competitions. There were also some unique items. A baby tooth that Riley had lost during a Warriors game and insisted on giving to Daddy as a lucky charm. A beaded bracelet that Ryan had made at school in the team colors, and a drawing by Cannon, then 4 years old, showing Steph as a superhero flying over a basketball court. It was in the third drawer, the one he rarely opened because it usually contained only old documents and archive items, that Steph discovered something completely unexpected. At the bottom of the drawer, carefully hidden behind an organized pile of old Sports Illustrated magazines, where he appeared on the cover, including the historic 2015 edition when he was named MVP for the first time. His fingers touched what seemed to be a thick, textured paper envelope, the kind used for wedding invitations or especially important communications. The envelope was carefully taped to the back wall of the drawer with transparent double-sided tape, as if someone wanted to keep it completely hidden but absolutely safe from being lost or damaged. It was clear it had been placed there intentionally, not forgotten by accident. Have you ever felt that inexplicable and almost magnetic curiosity when you find something that clearly wasn't meant to be found, but that awakens all your instincts to discover what it contains? Steph carefully pulled the envelope, noticing it was sealed but not glued shut, just closed with a small, elegant fold. There was no name written on the outside, no recipient, no sender. Just a date written in cursive. December 15th, 2012. His mind immediately went back to that specific period, one of the most difficult, dark, and devastating of his professional and personal career. December 2012. The memories came like an avalanche: persistent injuries, relentless media criticism, sleepless nights questioning whether he had enough talent to survive in the NBA. With slightly trembling hands and his heart racing with inexplicable anticipation, Steph opened the envelope with reverent care. Inside were 2 sheets of high-quality cream letter paper, folded with mathematical precision, and his breathing accelerated when he immediately recognized Isha's cursive and elegant handwriting, that calligraphy he had learned to love in romantic notes and shopping lists over more than a decade together. "My love," he read quietly, his voice echoing softly in the silent office. "I write this letter at a moment when I know you cannot see who you really are. I know the last few weeks have been terrible for you, devastating in ways you cannot express in words, and my heart breaks every day seeing you question everything you've always believed about yourself." Steph sat heavily in the Italian leather chair, completely absorbed by words he had never seen before, feeling as if he were spying on an intimate conversation with himself through his wife's eyes. "Today, you came home after another humiliating and painful defeat," the letter continued, "and said you might seriously consider leaving basketball forever. You said maybe you weren't good enough for the NBA? Maybe you were just delaying the inevitable and wasting everyone's time. You said maybe the critics were right about you." The memories of that dark period began to flood Steph's mind like an overwhelming emotional avalanche. December 2012. He remembered with painful and crystal clarity every detail. It had been one of the most brutal and psychologically devastating periods of his professional life. He was in his 4th NBA season, but chronic injuries in his right ankle that had tormented him since his Davidson college days had intensified dramatically. He had missed a large part of the 2011-2012 season due to 2 consecutive ankle surgeries, and when he finally returned to the courts in early 2012-2013, his confidence was completely shattered. The sports media had begun to openly question whether Steph Curry would be just another one of those talented college players who simply couldn't adapt to the étoile voice, intensity, and physical level of professional basketball. Prestigious television commentators regularly discussed whether the Golden State Warriors had made a strategic mistake in betting so much on him, especially considering his apparent propensity for serious injuries. ESPN, Sports Illustrated, and other major outlets began publishing detailed analyses, questioning whether Steph had the necessary physique for a long NBA career. Some even compared him to other players who had shown initial promise, but never managed to sustain excellence due to recurring physical problems. "You came home that specific night," the letter continued, and Steph could almost see Isha writing these words by the light of the dining table they still used, "and sat on this same couch where I write now. You put your head in your hands as if the weight of the world was on your shoulders, and said, 'Isha, I don't know if I can continue like this. Maybe I've been deluding myself for years. Maybe I'm not really good enough for this level.'" Steph vividly remembered that specific night with cinematic details. It was December 12, 2012. The Warriors had lost to the Sacramento Kings by 23 points, an absolutely humiliating result against a team that was among the worst in the league that season. Steph had made only 3 of 14 field goal attempts, including a devastating one of 8 from three-point range, precisely his specialty. His legs were still sore and lacking confidence after months away from the courts, and every movement seemed forced, unnatural. The Oakland crowd had begun to boo his missed shot attempts, something that had never happened before in his young career. "But I need you to know something fundamental," Isha's letter continued, and Steph could almost hear her voice reading the words with that gentle intensity that always calmed him. "Something that might be the most important truth I will ever write in my entire life. I see extraordinary things in you that you cannot see in yourself at this dark and painful moment. What's most impressive is how the people who truly love us can see our purest and most beautiful essence even when we ourselves are completely lost in the darkness of self-doubt. I see the genuine and consistent way you treat young fans even after the most painful and humiliating defeats," the letter continued. "I saw you last week, after losing to the Los Angeles Lakers by 18 points in a terrible performance, stopping in the stadium parking lot to take photos and talk for 15 minutes with a family that had traveled from Sacramento specifically to meet you. You were emotionally destroyed. I could see it in your eyes, but you still smiled genuinely at those 3 children as if they were the most important people in the world." Steph stopped reading for a moment, wiping his eyes with his shirt sleeve. He vaguely remembered that specific family. A father with 2 small daughters and a teenage son, all wearing Warriors shirts with his number. But he had no idea that Isha had observed that intimate moment of spontaneous kindness. "I see the tireless and almost obsessive way you dedicate yourself to training and recovery, even when your body is literally screaming with chronic pain," the letter continued. "I wake up at 5 in the morning, and you're not in bed because you left to run in the darkness, determined to regain your physical form and return to your best level. Your monastic discipline and total dedication inspire me every day and make me feel proud to be your wife. I see the priority and consistent way you treat our marriage and our family as sacred, even when everything seems to be crumbling professionally around you. Last night, when Riley woke up at 2 in the morning crying inconsolably because of a nightmare about monsters, you immediately dropped everything, including the game video you were studying, and spent 2 complete hours telling invented stories, singing songs, and making funny voices until she felt completely safe again. Steph's tears intensified dramatically. Riley was only 8 months old at the time of this letter, and he had completely forgotten that specific night. But now he could clearly remember his little daughter in his arms, looking at him with total trust, while he invented stories about brave princesses and gentle dragons. "You think basketball fundamentally defines who you are, my love," the letter continued. "But I know Steph Curry, the complete man, not just the athlete. And that man is extraordinary in ways that completely transcend any sport, any career, any external achievement." The letter continued for 2 more dense pages, each paragraph revealing deep and touching observations that Isha had made during that difficult period, specific moments of character and humanity that Steph had demonstrated when he thought no one was paying attention or keeping records. "You are a natural, authentic leader, even when you don't realize or recognize it in yourself," she had written. "I saw how Tyler Brooks came to you last week when he was going through serious problems with his girlfriend and questioning whether he should continue in the NBA. He didn't go to the team coach, didn't go to the official captain, didn't go to the assistant. He went directly to you, because he instinctively knows you really care about people as human beings, not just as pieces of a team." Brooks had been a teammate at that time, a young 23-year-old reserve player who was desperately struggling to establish himself in the league after coming from a small university. Steph vaguely remembered several conversations they had had in the locker room and during team trips, but hadn't realized at the time the real impact his words of encouragement and life advice had had on Tyler's life. "I saw you spending 2 hours of your time off on a Tuesday to take Tyler for coffee and talk about relationships, about pressure, about how to deal with unrealistic expectations," the letter continued. "You were exhausted from practice. Your schedule was packed. But you created time because you realized a human being needed support. I believe in you in a way that goes far beyond professional basketball," Isha had written, with even more careful handwriting, as if she were engraving the most important words. "I believe in the man of integrity you are when the stadium lights go out and the crowds go home. I believe in the extraordinary father you will become to our future children. I believe in the dedicated and loving husband you already are to me every day. Physical injuries and media criticism are circumstantial and temporary. Your essence as an integral and loving person is eternal and unshakable." Steph had to stop reading again, completely overwhelmed by the overwhelming emotion. How was it possible that Isha had seen so much beauty, hope, and potential in him during a period when he could only see failure, inadequacy, and uncertain future? How was it possible that she had documented with such care and love moments he didn't even remember anymore, transforming them into evidence of character that he had never recognized in himself? The letter went into even more specific details, mentioning exact conversations they had had, small but significant gestures Steph had made without thinking, moments of spontaneous kindness that Isha had observed and carefully stored in her memory. "I remember the morning you found that elderly female fan in the Chase Center parking lot," she wrote. "She was lost, trying to find her car after the game, clearly distressed. You not only helped her find the vehicle, but stayed talking for 20 minutes about her life, asked about her grandchildren, and made her laugh until all the worries disappeared from her face. Or when you saw that 12-year-old boy desperately trying to get an autograph, but being, pushed by the bigger adults. You stopped everything you were doing, made your way through the crowd, picked up the boy, and not only gave the autograph, but took selfies and talked with him about his dreams of playing basketball. Steph vaguely remembered these moments, but there had been hundreds of similar interactions over the years. What surprised him was that Isha had paid such careful attention to these specific details and had elevated them to the category of character evidence. The letter ended with words that made him cry even more intensely, his vision becoming blurred by tears. "I am not giving you this letter because I intuitively know that words are not what you need at this specific moment in your life," she had written. "You don't need motivational speeches or empty positive affirmations. You need concrete actions. You need silent but consistent support. You need someone who believes in you unshakably when you cannot believe in yourself. So I solemnly promise to be that person for you, every day, without exception. In every difficult practice, in every challenging game, in every moment of doubt that will inevitably come. I will believe for both of us until you can believe in yourself again." Sometimes the deepest love is the one that believes when we ourselves don't believe. I love you, Steph Curry, not just for the extraordinary player you can become in the future, but for the extraordinary man you already are today, at this moment, even when you cannot see it. With all my unconditional love and unshakable faith in who you are, Isha. The signature was followed by a small drawing of a heart and the initials S+A inside it, the same symbol they had started using since their Davidson college days. Steph sat in absolute silence for several minutes after finishing reading, processing each word, each meticulous observation, each promise Isha had made in secret during the darkest period of his career. The office was completely silent, except for the soft ticking of the antique clock on the wall and the distant sounds of family life happening on the lower floors of the house. He could hear Isha humming softly in the kitchen, probably finishing preparing the Sunday lunch that had become a sacred tradition in their family. He now clearly remembered how Isha had behaved during those brutally difficult months from December 2012 to March 2013. She had never pressured, never given unsolicited advice, or tried to solve his emotional problems, never tried to minimize his real pain with forced optimism or motivational cliches. Instead, she had simply been present consistently and lovingly. She had prepared his favorite meals after especially difficult games, without making a big deal about it. She had massaged his sore ankles every night without complaining about the time or effort. She had created an environment of absolute peace at home where he could recover emotionally between devastating games. She had awakened with him at 5 in the morning to prepare coffee before extra practices without him asking. She had organized the family schedule to minimize unnecessary stress. She had subtly defended him in social conversations when other people made comments about his career or injuries. Now Steph understood that all of this had been absolutely deliberate and strategic, not just natural feminine intuition or instinctive kindness, but a carefully thought-out strategy of love and support based on deep observations about who he really was as a person, independent of his performances on the courts. How incredible it is to discover that someone we love knows us better than we know ourselves, and used that knowledge not to manipulate us, but to love us more effectively. It was at that exact moment that Steph heard familiar footsteps coming up the wooden stairs, the rhythmic sound he had learned to recognize instantly after more than a decade living together. Isha was approaching the office. "Steph, are you up there?" Her voice echoed melodiously through the hallway, carrying that natural joy that always characterized Sundays with family. Lunch is almost ready. The girls are asking if you're going to eat with them today, or if you're too busy with work. Steph quickly dried his eyes with the backs of his hands and tried to compose himself emotionally, but knew it would be completely useless to try to hide his emotion from someone who knew him so intimately and could read his facial expressions like an open book. Isha appeared in the office doorway with a radiant smile on her face, wearing a light blue blouse and jeans, with hair pulled back in a casual ponytail that made her look even younger. But her expression changed dramatically when she saw Steph holding the letter with tears still shining in his eyes. "Oh," she said softly, stopping immediately at the entrance as if she had been struck by lightning of understanding. Her eyes moved quickly from the letter to Steph's face, and she knew exactly what he had found without needing explanations. You read it?" she asked, her voice containing a complex mixture of vulnerability, apprehension, and something that seemed almost relief. Steph nodded slowly, unable to trust his own voice for a few seconds. When he finally managed to find words, they came out choked with raw emotion. "Isha, why did you never give me this letter? Why did you hide it from me all these years?" She entered the office, slowly, as if walking on sacred ground, and sat carefully in the reading chair in front of his desk, her hands clasped in her lap in a posture Steph recognized as her way of dealing with emotionally intense conversations. "Because you didn't need words at that specific moment in your life," she said gently, her voice loaded with absolute conviction. "You needed concrete and consistent actions. You needed to feel that someone believed in you unshakably, not just hear it in words that could sound empty. But these words, they are absolutely beautiful, Isha. They are perfect. They could have helped me so much at that moment." Isha shook her head gently, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Steph, you were in a very dark and vulnerable emotional place. Anything I said at that specific moment could have sounded like well-intentioned lies or desperate attempts to make you feel better temporarily. I intuitively knew you needed to rediscover your confidence and self-esteem through your own actions and gradual achievements, not through external reassurance that could be questioned by your critical mind." Steph looked again at the letter, rereading some specific passages that had touched his heart most deeply. "Did you really see all these specific things in me? Even when I was completely lost and questioning everything?" "Especially when you were lost," Isha responded with emphasis. "It's relatively easy to see the best in someone when everything is going perfectly well in that person's life. But seeing the true and beautiful essence of a person during their darkest and most challenging moments, that's real and unconditional love." Steph got up from the chair and walked to where Isha was sitting, kneeling beside her armchair as he had done on the day he proposed to her, taking her delicate hands between his. "You saved my entire career," he said, his voice broken by overwhelming gratitude. "You saved my emotional life, and I didn't even know how deliberate and intelligent everything you did for me was." "I didn't save anything, Steph," Isha responded firmly, caressing his face with infinite tenderness. "I just consistently believed in what was already present in you. You saved your own career through tireless hard work, determination, and refusal to give up. I just believed for both of us during a temporary period." Steph thought deeply about the weeks and months that followed that dark period of December 2012. How slowly, gradually, his confidence had returned through small consecutive victories, how his performances on the courts had improved consistently and measurably, how he had become not just a significantly better player, but a more mature and resilient person. Sarah Mitchell helped me a lot during that period, Isha admitted quietly, lowering her eyes as if sharing a personal secret. Who is Sarah Mitchell? That name isn't familiar to me. A therapist specializing in relationships and sports psychology that I secretly sought at the time. I was so worried about you, but didn't know how to help effectively. Sarah taught me specific strategies about silent support, about how to be emotionally present without being intrusive or excessive. Steph was genuinely surprised. You went to therapy? Because of me? To learn how to support me better? I did several therapy sessions to learn to be the best possible wife for you during that specific period. I wanted to have absolute certainty that I was doing the right things emotionally, not just following my instincts or assuming I knew what would be best. The revelation hit Steph like a tsunami wave of gratitude and admiration. Isha had not only observed and believed in him during his darkest period, she had professionally educated herself on how to best support him, had invested time and energy in learning specific strategies for emotional support. Sarah taught me that sometimes the best support we can give is to silently believe in a person's capacity to overcome their own challenges, Isha continued. She taught me about the difference between support that strengthens versus support that creates dependency. Isha, he said, his voice completely broken by emotion. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve this level of love and dedication. Steph Curry, she responded with absolute firmness, placing both hands on his face. You deserve all the love that exists in the universe. And you always deserved it, especially during those darkest moments when you couldn't see it clearly. They stayed embraced in the office for several minutes, Steph processing the complete magnitude of what he had discovered, the level of love and emotional intelligence that Isha had demonstrated during the most vulnerable period of his life. Can I ask you one more thing? He said eventually, still emotional but curious. Of course, anything. Why did you keep the letter all these years? If you never planned to give it to me, why didn't you just throw it away after I recovered? Isha smiled with that mysterious expression that always indicated she had thought about something much more deeply than it appeared. Because I wanted to have a permanent record of that specific moment in our history. A tangible reminder of how we overcame together one of the most challenging periods we faced as a couple. And, well, I kind of secretly hoped you would find the letter someday, when you were emotionally mature enough to fully understand what it really means. And do you think I'm ready now to understand? I think you're in a completely different emotional place now, Steph. You can look back and see that dark period with mature and balanced perspective. You can understand that that difficult phase was just that. A temporary phase of growth, not who you fundamentally are as a person. Steph looked around the office, seeing the gleaming trophies, the smiling family photographs, the tangible evidence of everything he had achieved since that dark December of 2012. 3 NBA championships, 2 regular season MVP awards, 3-point shooting records, that had completely redefined how modern basketball was played and understood. But more important than any external professional achievement, he could see the family photos, the children's colorful drawings, the visual evidence of a rich, meaningful, and deeply loving life he had built together with Isha over more than a decade. Do you have other secret letters hidden around here that I should know about? He asked, trying to bring some lightness to the intense moment, but still half serious in the question. Isha laughed melodiously, that sound that always made Steph's heart race. Maybe I have some other documented surprises stored in safe places. Maybe you'll find other letters in the coming years, when you need to be reminded of things you've forgotten about yourself or about us. Please don't hide anything significant from me anymore, Steph said, half joking but with underlying seriousness. I want to know about all the love you have for me, especially during moments when I myself question whether I deserve it. Especially when you think you don't deserve it, Isha corrected with emphasis. Those are exactly the moments when this kind of love is most important and necessary. That Sunday afternoon, Steph and Isha spent almost 3 hours talking in detail about that specific period of 2012 to 2013. Steph asked dozens of questions about specific observations Isha had made in the letter, and she shared even more details about how she had seen his gradual journey of emotional and professional recovery. Do you specifically remember the night you scored 54 points against the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden? Isha asked, her eyes shining with the memory. It was February 27th, 2013, a few months after I wrote the letter. Of course I remember vividly. It was one of the best performances of my career up to that point. I felt like I had completely regained my confidence that night. When you came home at 2 in the morning after the flight back, you gently woke me up and said, "I think I'm finally back." And I thought silently, he never left. He just needed to gradually remember who he always was, fundamentally. Steph shook his head in total admiration. How could you maintain so much faith and perspective when I, myself, had no hope? Because sometimes true love means being someone's emotional memory when they temporarily forget themselves. It means being someone's eyes when they can't see clearly due to excessive proximity to the problem. As the afternoon progressed and the golden light began to change to more orange tones of sunset, Steph began to recontextualize not just that specific difficult period, but his entire career since then. Each subsequent achievement, each moment of renewed confidence, each time he had overcome later adversities, all of this had been built on the solid foundation of unshakable love that Isha had provided during his most vulnerable moment. I have an important confession to make, Steph said, as the sun began to set through the large office windows, painting everything with golden light. What confession? During all these years since 2013, I genuinely thought I had overcome that difficult period alone, through my own inner strength, personal determination, and individual hard work. I secretly prided myself on having turned things around on my own, without significant external help. And how do you see that experience now? Now I understand with crystal clarity that I was never alone, not even for a single day. You were there constantly, believing in me strategically and intelligently, supporting me in ways I didn't even notice, loving me so deeply and wisely that I wasn't even aware. My later success was never just mine. It was completely ours. Isha smiled with tears shining in her eyes. It was always ours, Steph. From the first day at Davidson College, through every challenge, every achievement, every moment of growth. It was always a shared journey. That night, during family dinner in the candlelit dining room, Steph looked around the oval table, at Isha patiently serving each child's favorite food, at Riley animatedly telling about a school project on oceanography, at Ryan proudly showing a drawing she had made in art class, at Cannon trying to impress everyone with tricks he had learned on the playground. He saw the rich, full, and deeply meaningful life they had built together over more than a decade of conscious partnership. And he felt a deeper and more comprehensive gratitude than he had ever experienced in his entire life. After the children went to sleep, after the nightly rituals of toothbrushing, bedtime stories, and goodnight kisses, Steph and Isha sat in the main living room, the original letter open between them on the glass coffee table. "I want to make some important promises," Steph said, taking her hands. "What promises?" "First, I want to promise that I will try to consciously see myself through your eyes more frequently. Not just during difficult moments, but every day. I want to learn to see the positive qualities in me that you see so clearly. And I promise to continue being your eyes when you temporarily can't see clearly," Isha responded. "That's a responsibility I accept with joy." "Second promise. I will never again assume I completely understand the depth of love you have for me. Today, I discovered there are layers of your love for me that I didn't even imagine existed. And there's probably much more I still haven't discovered." "There are always more layers, Steph," Isha said softly. "That's what happens when two people consciously grow together over so many shared years. Love doesn't become more superficial with time. It becomes exponentially deeper and richer." "And third promise. I will strive to document and express my love for you with the same intelligence and care you demonstrated in this letter. I want you to know how much I see in you, especially during your own moments of doubt." Isha leaned in and kissed him softly, a kiss loaded with decades of shared history and promises of future. Have you ever noticed how the most beautiful and transformative discoveries about the people we love often come when we least expect them, and how they can completely redefine our understanding of the past? A few weeks later, Steph was giving an interview to ESPN magazine about leadership and motivation in professional sports, when the interviewer asked a question about how he had overcome significant adversities early in his NBA career. For the first time in his public career, Steph didn't credit only his own hard work, personal determination, and inner strength. "I had someone who believed in me unshakably when I couldn't believe in myself," he said, looking directly at the camera. "My wife saw qualities and potential in me that I couldn't see during the darkest moments of my career. Sometimes the deepest love is the one that believes when we ourselves don't believe." When the interview was published nationally a few weeks later, Isha read that specific part several times, her heart overflowing with love for a man who had learned to give appropriate credit to the love that had always been present, but which he could finally recognize and value adequately. The letter from December 2012 is now carefully framed in Steph's office, no longer hidden in a dark drawer, but displayed with absolute pride alongside his most precious NBA trophies. Because he learned a fundamental truth: some documented treasures are infinitely more valuable than any external professional achievement. And whenever Steph has an especially difficult day, whenever media criticism becomes too intense or public, expectations too heavy, he looks at that framed letter and remembers a transformative truth. He is loved deeply, not for what he achieves externally, but for who he is fundamentally as a person. And it always was that way. The discovery of that letter changed Steph in ways he is still completely understanding. Not just about how he sees and interprets his past, but about how he consciously lives his present and plans his future. He became dramatically more attentive to Isha's daily small gestures of love, more grateful for the silent ways she continues to support him in his career and personal life. And most important of all, he learned that true marital love is not just about being physically present during happy good times. It's about observing carefully, believing unshakably, and supporting strategically, especially when, and mainly when, the person we love cannot see their own light and value. Today, when young NBA players seek Steph, asking for specific advice on how to overcome difficult and dark moments in their careers, he always talks about the fundamental importance of having people who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. Find someone who sees you with absolute clarity, he always says, not someone who minimizes your real struggles or who superficially says everything will automatically be fine, but someone who sees who you really are as people, even in the darkest moments, and who believes in that person unshakably. The letter Isha, never delivered in December 2012, ended up being delivered at the absolutely perfect moment, when Steph was emotionally mature enough to understand not just the specific words, but the deeply intelligent and strategic love behind each documented observation. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is completely silent, and Steph is reflecting on his extraordinary life, he thinks curiously about how many other secret letters Isha might have carefully hidden over the years. How many other loving observations she made silently. How many other times she consciously chose consistent actions instead of potentially empty words. But he doesn't actively search for more hidden letters. Because now he understands a fundamental truth. Life's greatest treasure is not necessarily in what was written and documented in the past, but in what is being lived consciously and with gratitude every day in the present. A love that observes carefully, that believes unshakably, that supports intelligently, and that never, ever gives up. And that living reality is infinitely more valuable than any letter could adequately express.